This meeting is being recorded.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Central Oregon Fly Tyers Guild Zoom meeting. And tonight we're doing a side-by-side with Jeff Perin from the Fly Fisher's Place.
And Sherry Steele, and I'm at her house.
So welcome everybody. And I'm going to go ahead and ask Jeff to talk about himself and introduce yourself. Give us a little bio and then cut to the chase. You can go ahead and take over, my friend.
All right. Well, thanks so much. And thanks for having me over. You know, I taught this class for Sherry last year and had some, I think, some audio and video difficulties from my house, whether that be the connection that I have or the camera that I'm using or what. So we decided this year that I just, you know, head on over to the Steele's house. And I've been here for a little over an hour. I've had shrimp with cocktail sauce. We've solved a lot of the world's problems, and we're ready to move on to this class and then move on to the expo together. And we're thinking about getting rid of Eric altogether. So anyway, a little bit about myself. So a lot of you guys maybe know me from the Fly Fisher's Place. I've owned the Fly Fisher's Place for a long time, since the early 90s. Been in the fishing business since the mid 80s, and been in the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, kind of reinvented myself to being more of a stillwater guide than an active participant in day-to-day retail sales at the fly shop, although I am still there on certain days and still, you know, actively own the business at this point. I'm out on the water a lot more these days and really finding a lot of joy and learning just unbelievable amounts of stuff about fish and hatches and wildlife and water and everything. So it's been kind of a pleasure to have this next phase of my career at this point in my life, and I just feel really lucky to have this going on right now. So so a few of the flies that I'm going to tie today have come as they've been adapted from other flies and made into something that I think works better for the lakes. And some of these flies are very much appropriate for river fishing. So if you're thinking, oh, man, I don't really fish lakes, I don't want Jeff to just talk to me about lake stuff. Believe me, these are not just lake flies. You could use them anywhere. So as I was thinking about and using the word, I didn't want to use the word invent, because this fly wasn't invented. This first fly that we're going to tie was adapted, and I think that's a really kind of fair concept of this particular fly. So I want to just grab really quickly. This is one of my boat boxes. I've had a dozen of these things in my boat with different things, but this particular one is just beetles. And some of you have taken tying classes from me before, even through the guild, and maybe have tied this fly with me. It's not going to show up super well here, but it's a fantastic beetle fly. I've caught fish with this at the Metolius, Fall River. I'm sure it would work on the Deschutes at sometimes, but I'll tell you, this is a moneymaker for me on the lakes, particularly up in the Newberry Caldera where East and Paulina are, but Hosmer and sometimes Lava Lake. This is a great fly, but it's tied on a standard dry fly hook. And when I'm guiding and we're working our way down the bank lines, usually fishing this fly on the bank lines, not always, but typically, you know, within about 10 feet of the shoreline or cliffs or whatever, you find that people are going to cast this fly out, and a lot of times it lands upside down in the water. So for me, I recognize that right away because I'm looking at people casting their beetles out nearly every day of the season. And I'll be like, hey, John, that fly is upside down, mend it. And they'll be like, huh? And I'm motoring along with my Minn Kota electric trolling motor, bow mount trolling motor, and we're moving, and now the fly's dragging away from and by the time they mend it, you know, maybe it turns over on that first mend, maybe it takes a second mend, but by that time it's well off of the bank line. I'm just like, go ahead and recast it. And so this fly tends to land because of the hook. It tends to land upside down fairly frequently, especially on a windy day. So I would guess that maybe around 60 to 70% of the cast that lands right side up with the red or whatever color of foam you choose indicator showing, and it's ready to fish when it does. But if it lands upside down and you got to mend it, and maybe it takes 2 mends, that fly maybe isn't still in the zone where we wanted that fly to land. So in terms of adapting to those circumstances, I started tying that fly on a jig hook, the same fly that you might tie a perdigon on, or a balance leech on. And the reason for that is the leader is now coming underneath it, coming out. And I've had days where this fly has landed right side up 100% of the time. And I would guess that since I started fishing this fly in August of this year, I would guess that probably in the high 90% rate of it landing right on the first cast. So it was
that last hook, a heavy wire hook.
I'm sorry, what?
Last hook that you're showing with the first fly, is that a heavy wire hook?
The first fly was just tied on this hook is a 102Y Tiemco dry fly hook. The first one was tied on, so just a standard dry fly hook. And then this one is a Montana Fly Company jig hook. I think it's 60-degree bend. I think I can't remember. It's in the directions. It might be like a 7204 jig hook wide gap. So as I was thinking about this class today, and thinking about the word adapting, I thought maybe I might explain where the body came from first. So because you know where the general fly came from, but you don't know where the jiggy twist part of the fly, the twist part. The jig comes from the hook, but the twist comes from someplace else. The beetle is pretty self-explanatory. It's a beetle pattern. So I wanted to actually start by showing you a fly that dates back to a trip I took to Yellowstone with my grandfather in 1988, the year of the fires. And I remember going into Blue Ribbon Flies and talking to Craig and crew. At that time, he had this wonderful guy that was a football coach in the South someplace, and he spent his summers working at Blue Ribbon and tying flies and helping customers. And he was a terrific guy. And I remember them suggesting going fishing on the Madison at Reynolds Pass with a fly called a serendipity, which was an adaptation of a fly called a ram caddis, Ross A. Marigold caddis. And so I thought I would show you after we fished a serendipity for a year or two, the idea that one day I had about twisting a couple of materials together for a serendipity, and maybe tell you about how well that worked. And then when, as we started putting this beetle together, the idea came to combine the materials again, because I wanted something that was really buoyant, but I also wanted the iridescence and sparkle that peacock curl would give. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tie really quickly. Can I borrow some deer hair?
Oh, I got some here someplace.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, here you go.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to switch cameras here.
Here, down one.
This one,
Click on that. And which you want, the material cam or the video?
the video
Okay,
capture
there
one.
you go.
Okay. So there's a fly we're going to tie a little later. And I'm borrowing Sherry's vise because it turned out that mine was going to be much too tall for her setup here. This will be my first time ever tying on a peak vise. Okay, so I've got, you could tie this on a scud hook. I've just got a standard. Sherry, let's see here. That's a little loose. Do I just
Just back off that guy right there. Yeah,
this one?
yeah, this here. This device is a little tricky. When you put it in here, if it's not tight enough, and just back that down a little bit.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
Awesome. Thank you. Technical support over here behind me.
I don't think I got it in there straight though.
Well, we'll straighten it out here in just a second. Let me just get a little bit of thread on here. Okay. Garbage. Straighten hook. Okay. Everybody's familiar with Zelon. Great material, super for tying flies like serendipities and trailing shucks and some wings. Just going to take a strand of Zelon, try to get used to the camera here. And I'm going to take a strand or two of peacock curl. I think I'll just do one on this size fly. Okay. And we're gonna come back to the bend of the hook here. Tie that in, coming forward using that material to keep the taper of the body the same all the way through. Okay, and that's why I didn't trim it at the back. Okay, now I'm going to take some hackle pliers. Where's the camera? There we go. Hackle pliers, and catch that hackle plier here on both of those materials. And then I'm going to use a dubbing twister
Got
at
a
the
question about what bead?
any bead you would tie on. I mean, this is like a tungsten 2.8 millimeter, I think. But whatever. I mean, that's for this, it's not really important. Any bead that you would tie, like serendipity, which is a caddis, larva, or even kind of a caddis pupa, and depending on how you fish it. So tungsten probably these days, to match the hook. So I'm going to twist this counterclockwise so that it forms a little rope. Okay, and every time I then take it over the top of the hook, it's tightening up just a little bit. So I figure that that's tight enough. So now I'm going to take this around, pressing each wrap into the previous wrap. And you can see that this adds a really special segmentation to kind of just an old boring serendipity. All right, get up to that bead, catch that with 3 or 4 wraps of thread over the top of it, trim, and then we're just going to get a little deer hair. Nothing fancy here, just a little clip of deer hair. Pull out the fuzz at the bottom. Blow in those tips just a little bit, and that helps blow in the butts. I mean, helps bring out the stuff
match
from the,
already
from the
this
tips.
morning.
Okay, now I'm just going to tie that right in over the top of the bead here. And give it a little whip finish.
Oh,
Trim your thread. Trim your deer
thank
hair.
you.
And that is where the idea of this twisted body for the Beetle came from. Was I got bored one day with just the standard old serendipity and decided to twist in some peacock herl into the twisted Zelon or Antron yarn that was so popular for the serendipity. So that is a twisted serendipity, which a lot of you probably never saw because I don't think I ever showed it to anybody other than just a couple of fishing buddies. So it's pretty neat. So I'm going to switch cameras here really quick and show you guys the materials that we're going to. There we go. Okay. So this material here is called McFly foam. And if you have any roughness to your fingers at all, it likes to really stick to your skin, to your fingers. I'm going to use peacock herl, brown latex rubber legs, flexi floss. I'm going to use black foam for over the top, the carapace, and then I use a combination of different foam indicator tops. But for my eyes, and I find for most of my customers' eyes, that they see red the best. In a lot of lake conditions, the red just seems to show up really well out on the water. So when I'm guiding people, and it's my job to find the fly first, I certainly want them to find it really soon thereafter, but it's certainly my job to find it as quickly as that hits the water, so I can tell them set. It's really important for me to be able to see it, and I just personally I see that red foam super quickly. All right, so I'm going to grab a hook here, change cameras, and go back to the camera on the vise. Nice. Okay. So jig hook, wide gap. Man, that hooks fish so well. I'm going to come down around the bend just a little bit. It just makes that curve of the body look so natural when you compare it to like holding a real beetle in your hand. We already got some foam strips pre-cut, and I'm just going to use one of those. And if you kind of compare the hook gap to the width of the foam that you're using, that's a pretty close, cut width that you can sort of plan on. Okay, so if it's super wide compared to the hook gap, it's going to be a little too wide, a little too bulky to tie in and to fold over, and probably look a little bit funny. And if it's too thin, you're not going to get the flotation out of the fly that you want, nor the kind of that, rounded, flattened top that a beetle would have when it's a real beetle, when it's pressing into the surface of the river or the lake. So I'm going to put this in right at the bend of the hook, over the top of the hook. And I'm going to catch it with my thread right behind the bend of the hook, or right in front of the bend of the hook, excuse me. And I'm just going to kind of come up forward with it here, catching it along the way, and then coming back and tying it down. I'm using 3/0 thread here, so I can be pretty aggressive with compressing that foam and making sure that it's really safely tied in. And you can see that I can move that foam behind here, and it's not rolling on the hook shank in any way. Okay, this material is again, it's a little bit tricky to play with, because it does want to stick to your fingers. But I'm just going to pull off kind of a little hank of it here, and then I'm going to take that and I'm going to divide it about in half. And this McFly foam floats really well, and that's the reason. So originally, the first Jiggy Beetle, I used just like ice dubbing, black or peacock ice dubbing. And what I found is that it would float for a little bit, but the ice dubbing itself would absorb so much water that it would eventually sink pretty quickly and be difficult to track on the water. And I was constantly maintaining it in my dry fly patch, and then the Shimazaki dry shake or loon dry dust that I keep, in the boat box. So I went back and did a second iteration using Antron yarn or Zelon with the peacock curl twisted, because I thought about that. I wanted peacock. I want the iridescence of peacock, which is why I chose that original dubbing for the first version. And what I found was the fish really liked it with the peacock, but it still didn't float quite right. So I went and fished out a few days, and then I was like, what else could I use? What else could I use? And then I ended up settling on this McFly foam, which just is really, really good for floating. So anyway, so I'm going to take that, and I'm going to again grab a peacock curl or two. You could put a couple in here if you want. I think I'll do two on this one with this size hook. And I'm going to get rid of the stems of that peacock curl and line up the peacock and the McFly foam together. Just going to give that a little bit of a trim so it's nice and flat, and tie that in over the top here, coming back and forth, and then coming back to about a third of the way back from the eye of the hook. I'm going to bring my thread in anticipation of where I'm going to end this body. Okay. And again, just like that first fly, I'm going to use the hackle pliers, get rid of the material from the last one, stretch that McFly foam and catch the two strands of peacock in it. You can see that that is nice and tight. And if you don't have a dubbing twister, you could do this, just by hand like this. I'm still twisting it, but it just goes faster. And if you don't have a tool like this, you could make one out of a bent paper clip, a big paper clip, really easily, and twist this up. But this just speeds up that whole twisting process so much. It just makes this fly super easy to tie and fast to produce a half a dozen of them before a trip. Poor Tina. I come home from a guide trip, get dinner in, and I'm like, okay, I got to go work on the boat, and then I got to go tie a dozen flies. She never sees me in the summer. Cut that one a little short. It's all right. Just catching that body with the tying thread, trim that out of the way, and then we're going to pull the foam carapace over the top. And as I do that, I'm going to compress with my left thumb and index finger. I'm going to compress and kind of round that over the body just a little bit. And then right in front of, you can see that the thread kind of catches my index finger as I come around. And right in front of my fingers, I'm going to tie that down, and then I'm going to come forward with that just a little bit with the tying thread. I'm going to straighten that out just a touch. Foam is so fun to tie with. It can be frustrating at times, but it's really pretty easy to tie with when you get used to it. Now, I'm going to just trim. I'm not going to make the final trim yet, but I'm going to trim just a little bit of this out of the way for now, just to make the rest of the tying process a little bit easier, so that big flap of foam isn't getting in the way. And then I'm going to grab my flexi floss. And I can usually make a fly out of one strand of this. Okay, so from the zip tie out, I can usually tie a complete set of legs on both sides of the fly with one strand. So I'm going to cut that, and then I'm going to cut these in half. Get used to the. Yep, there we go. Okay, and then I'm going to take one set of legs on my side of the hook first. You could do the other side certainly, but I always do it this way. So my side of the hook first, get those into place. And you can see got that nice little separation there. And come on your side of the hook. And again, you can see good separation. All right. Now I've got a little strip of red foam tied. It's a little bit narrower than the black foam. And I'm going to take this and tie it in so that it won't require any trimming on the front, but will get trimmed on the back side of the fly. Okay, so I'm going to line that up and tie it in right in between the legs. I'm going to roll that back flat with my fingers, and you can see I'm cranking down on that pretty good. And then this is a standard size whip finisher, and this is a extended reach whip finisher. Okay, just going to go over to the other camera so you can see that a little bit better. I think yeah, the difference in the whip finishers. Okay, because of where I like to take this whip finish onto this fly with this style of hook. When I was tying on a regular dry fly hook, I would actually like to come underneath here and whip finish at the eye of the hook. But with this fly, I actually like to put my whip finish right here over the top of the foam. And I can do that with this whip finisher, but with the extended reach whip finisher, it just makes it a lot easier because it gives me more room to make that space there. Try not to catch the leg there, Jeffrey. Okay, and then we're just going to finish that guy. Cut the thread. And now I need a little bit of trimming. So the first trim that we're going to do is the back of the strike indicator, the little cider post. Then we're going to get the front of the foam. And then I like to turn it. I like to round that foam edge just a little bit. Just give it just a little bit of a roundness on the edges. Then I like to take the legs and just give them a little bit of a trim. I'd rather have them be a little long starting out to get more movement on the water. But to a certain point, I mean, you don't want them to be crazy long. So I'm going to trim these again just a little bit more on that back one there. And then the final step, can I borrow your, I don't know where I put my bodkin, Sherry. Is my bodkin over there in my toolbar?
Nope, I can give you one, no?
I wonder if I dropped it out in the driveway.
Here's one.
Okay, thanks.
It's an old one.
Oh, well, that's good. Okay, now I'm just going to use a little bit of head cement here. And on the underside of those thread wraps, just give it just a little head cement there, soak into those threads and that whip finish, and just make that fly just a little bit more durable for a day of fishing and reeling them in. All right. So that is how the adaptation of the Jiggy twist beetle came to be. It was a favorite dry fly of mine, and the thought of some new materials and an old technique, and some modern hooks. And we have what I would say is probably one of the most important dry flies in my box for lakes, but also, you know, to a certain extent for rivers too. I wouldn't call it the most important dry fly for rivers, but I would definitely put it in the top 2 or 3 for lakes, that I use. So it's a really cool fly. I hope that you guys get a chance to fish with it too and try this out. And I hope that you share your results with me, and you let me know that you used it, you tied it, you used it, and you caught fish with it, because I'd sure love to hear about it.
We have a question from Paul. Can you use black poly yarn instead of McFly foam?
I would say absolutely. Yeah, I would say absolutely. Great question. Great question, Paul. I couldn't imagine why you couldn't use black poly yarn. You know, black poly yarn has a really nice flotation quality too. It's not as thick as the McFly foam, but I would guess that it would fish extremely well for that instead of the McFly foam, and certainly going to be a little easier to find, you know, in most fly shops. Yeah, so good, really good question. Ron Geyer said, do you fish it in different colors? Well, Ron, that's also a terrific question, and the answer is absolutely. And my second favorite color to tie that in is in brown. And last year I started to tie that fly also with a purple foam back, and actually had a client catch the biggest brown of the season in my boat on the purple one. So that was really cool. I gotta tell you a story about that, actually, because this is really a meaningful story to me. So that client of mine has been going with me for a lot of years, and he has Parkinson's disease. And he went with me, and it was 2017 to go fishing in Tasmania, and he had just been diagnosed. And I've seen the progression of that disease get a little bit worse and a little bit worse each season. And he got COVID coming home from Montana this summer. He was at a fishing lodge and got COVID. And I'll be darned that COVID really, really messed with the Parkinson's and kind of took it to the next level. And he told me he wasn't sure he's even going to be able to go on the trip. I said, look, we're going on the trip. I'm going to bring that chair in my boat, and you're going to sit in that chair as much as you want to sit in the chair, but we're going fishing. And anyway, so make a long story short, it was in September. Weather was kind of iffy, you know, we're all bundled up a bit, working along this shoreline, not too far from that group camp there at Paulina Lake. And his buddy Dick had just landed a smaller fish, decent fish, but nothing special. And I was putting the net away and turned around to hear this wallowing at the surface, and Daryl telling me, I've got a nice one. Like, yeah, no shit, you've got a nice one. So so I take the remote control that I wear around my neck for the motor and motor off of the shoreline about 50 yards, just to make sure that fish wasn't going to get caught up in any boulders or branches or logs or anything like that. And we fought it for a while. And I got it in the net, and it, you know, it wasn't giant, but it was a big fish. And got a photo of it, and Daryl released it, and he stood up and he kind of held onto my Honda motor in the back for balance, and he let out the most primal scream I've ever heard anybody yell, like, wow. At the time, Dick and I are looking at each other like, what is this guy doing? You know, like, this is really weird. But by time I got home, and I mean, it wasn't so weird. I mean, he's my friend regardless, but by the time I got home, I realized that what that stupid fish meant to that guy who's been dealing with this illness, and the fact that I could tie this fly and put him in, by luck, put him in the right place at the right time to cast that thing along this bank line. What that meant for somebody that hasn't been feeling well. And I think that's the great thing about my job. It's the great thing about being anglers is what it does for our mental state.
So you guys have any questions about this fly? Anything you want to ask Jeff about?
Nope.
Okay.
Okay.
Next.
Yeah.
We're not done yet. He's got more to share with you.
All right. So changing cameras here. That's
Well, can I sneak one question in?
of course.
I may have missed it early on. I apologize if I did, but what size hook? I know you went to the jig hook, obviously, but what size?
Well, I tie this mostly in size 12 through 16, but there were a couple of days this year where stomach pump samples showed fish that were eating beetles that were about a size 20. So I wouldn't hesitate to tie a couple of smaller beetles, whether it be this exact beetle or not. That's kind of up to you, but I will tell you that the majority, I would say, if you just were going to start with one size in your box, you're going to experiment with a beetle for the first time ever, I would tie it in a 14. I would tie it with a black body or a black carapace and also a brown carapace in a size 14. And you'll cover about 95% of your beetle days with that combo.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna change here to a little longer shank jig hook. Give it a little bit, generally speaking, the yellow jackets are a little bit longer bodied than the beetles are. Although there are some beetles out there, there are lots of different kinds of beetles, of course. So materials that we're going to use, I'm going to use a Oregon cheese colored McFly foam. I'm using kind of a, I can't remember the exact name of sulfur. I think it's called sulfur orange. It's in the materials list. 2 millimeter foam. Again, we'll use the red foam for the indicator top, using a cream color Zelon, straight Zelon. Again, peacock herl, and then these beautiful barred rubber legs that are brown and black. It just looks so realistic on this fly. So I'm going to switch over cameras again. This is so fun. Sherry's got such a cool setup. So if you fish in Central Oregon in September, you've been bothered by yellow jackets before, and the reality of it is, they are a pain in the butt, but the fish eat them too, and they end up in the water, especially on cold mornings. But they just end up in the water for different reasons, just like many terrestrials. They end up in the water for different reasons. So I was kind of reminded of the importance of bees with a conversation recently with an old friend of mine named Max Robertson. Some of you might know from the lakes or through fishing. He was a school teacher in Tumalo for a number of years, and I think Julie might be a member of the guild here. I can't remember, but great guy. And I remember having a really cool conversation with him here recently about September is just like such an important month for fishing. For fishing bees or yellow jackets on the lakes up here, especially up in the Newberry Crater. So I was reminded of that, and I've fished bees for a long time. I remember, years and years ago, early 2000s, probably mid 2000s, something like that. Blue ribbon flies, which has always been kind of an inspirational place for me. I love their flies. I love the people. I love the fishing around there. They had a fly called the killer bee, And I remember ordering some from a catalog and trying it out and catching fish with it in all kinds of various places, including Fall River, and just like really loving the experimentation with a totally new food item that I've never experimented with before, and watching the fish react to it. So when the Jiggy Twist Beetle came into play, that was about the time that the bees were becoming important. It was about the time that Max and I had this conversation. It was about the time that my head started to spin a little bit and went, how about a bee pattern or a wasp pattern that looked like that old fly that I used to tie, or had, had the bee look to it. So I was like, yeah, I think we could do that. So here it is, and it works. And you should tie some, and if nothing else, you should have them in your box as conversation pieces and show them to your kids and grandkids, because they're going to think that this is one of the coolest flies they've ever seen. Okay, so first thing you're going to do is cut a little strip of foam. And again, it's going to be pretty darn close to what the gap of your hook is going to be. Okay, so I'm just going to double check that. Yep, pretty darn close enough for who it's for. The trout. Okay, and again, I like to come just a little bit down around the bend on these, just to give it a little extra curvature. And you can see where I'm tying this in is not right there at the bend. That's not my most important tie down point. That's going to finish it, but I'm just kind of tying it right in the middle and getting it where I'm going to stop that foam when I pull it over for the top of the body. Okay, that I'm going to come down just a little bit more around the bend, and then I'm going to take my tying thread and just compress all that foam. All right, so that's, geez, we could probably just fish that. I'm going to take this Oregon cheese McFly foam. Stuff is so sticky. And I'm going to grab again 2 strands of the peacock curl and cut the butts off of them so they're nice and clean there, and then line that up with the end of the McFly foam. And then again, I'm just gonna kind of trim that just nice and flat, and tie it in over the top here, coming back to butts up right against the foam, and then come back to just about 1/3 of the way back from the eye of the hook. I'm going to stretch this just a little bit, and I'm going to trim the McFly foam yarn to the same length as the peacock curl. And I'm going to put that in my hackle pliers and twist it just like we did with the previous 2 flies. Okay, and here we go. Twist, twist, twist. So speedy. I would imagine panfish would probably get a huge kick out of this fly too. I know some of you like to fish for crappie and bluegill and stuff. I would guess that this would be a pretty cool little fly for panfish. Trim that out of the way. Now we're gonna do the same thing that we did with the beetle. We're gonna pull that over the top. And then I'm going to kind of take my fingers and compress it and roll it over the top of that body. And then really compress that thread down on that foam coming forward. That's rolling on me just a little bit. So I'm going to twist it back into place. And then come forward, just giving myself right up to the bend of that where the hook eye comes down. And this gives me a lot of room to tie in the wing, the rubber legs, and the strike indicator top. Okay, so I'm just going to trim this again like I did with the beetle, just to get it out of my way, but it's not being trimmed entirely yet. Before the wings are in, I'm actually going to take this now and start putting the stripes on it. And then one thing you want to do, because you can't get to the edges from the top, is you want to kind of come in and hit the edges with your rotary vise, or you can take this out of the vise, and if you don't have a rotary vise, you can do that. But that's your look there. Okay, looks like it might sting. All right. Next step, couple of the strands of this cream Zelon. I tried white at first. It just wasn't quite right. It didn't look realistic to me. So I switched the fly to cream, and me, it looks a lot better. I think the fish like it better too. So I've got two strands of the Zelon together here. I'm going to cut that in half because I don't need that all for this one fly. Excuse me. Now, right in front of where the foam body comes over the top there, I'm gonna come over and I'm gonna cinch that in with just one wrap. I'm gonna come around that about 3 or 4 times, and then I'm gonna come around it the other direction about 3 or 4 times. Okay, and then that's it. Okay, it's like tying in spinner wings for a rusty spinner. All right, now the next step is the legs, and that these variegated brown black legs, I think are just the right choice for this fly. You could use other things, but this really looks like the wasp legs to me. And to the fish, that's the most important. Okay, and just like the beetle, I'm going to tie that in with half of these legs coming in on my side of the hook. So I got this coming in on my side. Then I'm going to kind of pull this wing back out of the way, and I'm going to get the legs tied on your side of the hook. All right, got them all in there. Okay, they're kind of intermixed with the wings right now. No worries, that'll get fixed in the trimming process. And just like the just like the Beetle, I'm gonna square this off. I want to take the foam that's going to be the strike indicator top, and I want to tie it in on the front side of the hook to the exact length that's going to be, so I don't have to trim that again. Okay, I'm going to trim the back, but I don't want to have to trim the front again. As I compress that foam, I can also roll it and manipulate it so it's in exactly the right position before it gets so tight that it won't want to do that anymore. Okay, now with my big whip finisher, put about 6 turns in there, tighten her up, trim it, and then we're going to start trimming the rest of this. So the first thing I always trim is the strike indicator top. The second thing I'm going to trim are the wings, and they're going to be just a little bit longer than the than where the body comes back to. I had one of those legs in there. I want to make sure that that doesn't happen. You want to make sure that doesn't happen too when you're tying this at home. Okay, so we're going to just give that a little stretch and cut them both at the same time. And then we're going to come in and trim the legs. I don't know that I've ever really thought about what the exact leg length should be. Like more importantly, it's a suggestion of legs and a little bit of movement rather than getting overly exacting on what that leg trim ought to be. Same for the Beetle. Just kind of trimming up a little bit of that antron, or Zelon in this case. Okay, now the last step is going to be, we're going to trim the front piece of foam, the head, and just like on the Beetle, we're going to just kind of round off those corners a little bit, and then we're going to grab that pin one more time and just kind of put some stripes and eyes. Here on the edges of that. And tie some up, give them a try next September, early October. I bet you'll be pretty entertained with the way fish take that fly. They eat it a lot differently than they eat a beetle, I can tell you that. They're careful about eating wasp, and yet they eat them quite well. So it's neat, and it's just a fun way to tie wasp fly, and kind of thinking way outside the box for what fish will eat and what they want to eat. So hopefully you get a chance to fish with this one too. So I want to finish with a discussion on one more fly, and that is, a lot of you are tying balance leeches, kind of the older way, the original way. I can remember going to Phil Rowley's seminar in Sun River, and it was a 2-day seminar at the Shark. It was put on with the Central Oregon Fly Fishers and Sun River Angler Club, and they were talking about, balance leeches on the second day. Phil was there alone. Brian was sick and couldn't make it. They were supposed to tag team that presentation. And I thought to myself, balance leeches, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And turned out that by the end of that season, I was fishing balance leeches on a regular basis, thanks to my friend Phil Fisher out in Sun River, who kept telling me, those balance leeches that Phil taught us at the Shark were actually pretty darn good up at East Lake. I was like, really? Okay, I got to try them. So anyway, turned out that the color that Phil Fisher from Sun River introduced me to was this color right here, which is Mohair Plus Spectrum blend. I know that Semi Seal has a color that's really similar to this too. But this is a color that I rely on a lot, and this is a bead that I rely on a lot to match with that. Although when days that they don't take the orange bead, a lot of days they'll take this this gunmetal bead. So the colors, you know, that are really important are black, this spectrum kind of brown color, and then if you're a river angler, and I'm sure this would work in the lakes too. I haven't used it in the lakes. This is one of my river nymph colors here. It's called Midnight Fire Ice Dub, and I think we'll do that one because I need some in my box, and I've got plenty of the other ones in my box. So I think I'm going to start with the Midnight Fire, and I'm going to do it with this gunmetal bead. This is one of the new Fulling Mill calls them drop beads, and they're oblong shaped, teardrop shaped. They're not slotted like a slotted bead for a jig hook. More weight, because of how they're designed, more weight goes out over the eye. And it doesn't balance as well as putting a tungsten bead on a pin and tying that out off of the end of the eye. Okay, it doesn't, but it balances well enough that you can fish it hanging underneath a strike indicator. And yeah, it might be, you know, a little askew hanging underneath the strike indicator, but not enough to worry about. Like I can tell you that the fish don't seem to mind. And particularly in a river situation, when you're, you know, using this as your point fly on a Euro nymph setup, or even fishing it underneath an indicator, this is just a fly that's going to get down to the bottom and fish really well. It doesn't matter a darn bit whether it's balanced perfectly or not. Okay, so if you haven't used these beads yet, and again, they're kind of, you know, shaped a little bit different than some of your other beads. They're oblong shaped. The side that goes onto the hook first has a little indentation in it. All right, so I'm gonna just show you that using Sherry's bent bodkin. But you can see that there's kind of a little point here where they've bored that out, and on the other side it doesn't have that. Okay, so the side that you're going to put onto the hook first is that side that's been bored out. So I'm going to take that and get that done here first, going on to the hook point. Coming up and over. And I'll put that back into the vise. Now, start my thread. And with 3/0, I can build this up really quickly. And you can see that I'm pinching that bead forward, and I'm just getting my thread build up behind that bead to really push that thing down into the eye of the hook, so it's not going to rotate much. And you can see how much of the weight of that bead comes out in front of the eye there, right? So that's really important in helping this balance and swim correctly. This is a fly you could also fish on an intermediate or type 3 or whatever sinking line you want, and cast and retrieve. You can fish it under an indicator in the lake. You can Euro nymph it in any of the rivers. You can fish it underneath a strike indicator in any of the rivers. This is a really versatile fly, and in this color combination, this Midnight Fire with the tungsten gunmetal bead on it. Let's see, this is a 4mm. We actually fish these up to 5mm beads for really great penetration. This is one I hope my guides aren't going to be too pissed off when they say this, but this is one of our guides' favorite flies over on the McKenzie. Pretty much all of my guide team is using this fly kind of day in and day out over on the McKenzie. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is come back. Oops, I gotta finish my thread wraps here. Okay, first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tie in a little bit of a tail and just grabbing some ice stub out of the package, coming in at the back, and I'm just gonna double that over and add that in for the tail, okay? And if that seems a little long, you can just break it, and you can break it to taper it. Okay, now you could do one of two things here. You could do a dubbing loop if you wanted to, or you could just dub it and pick it out. I'm gonna just dub it and pick it out. That's how I do. That's how I do my own. Goes fast. And sometimes when I'm in a hurry to get the fly boxes filled for other people, going fast makes more difference than being fancy. Not that I don't like dubbing loops, but this works just as well. Okay, so butting that up right up against where the tail was, and then kind of coming forward here, making sure that the taper kind of remains the same, gets a little thicker maybe towards the bead. Gonna add just a little bit more dubbing behind the bead. Put a couple of whip finishes in it, and then I don't even have to worry about putting head cement on it. It'll fish just great that way. And I'm going to take my dubbing brush and just start really roughing that dubbing up. First out, okay. First I'm going to come out with it. Then I'm going to take the other side of the dubbing brush and start combing it back into the tail. I'm going to trim just a little bit of that tail out, tapering that just a touch. And that right there, guys and gals, friends, is a great fly to take to the Deschutes, the McKenzie, the Fall River, Metolius probably. I've never fished it in the Metolius yet. And certainly in that color combination, I don't have a lot of confidence in it yet for the lakes. But like I said, adding that fly in this, black color, the spectrum color, and probably a olive and even a kind of a burgundy or maroon color would be a wise choice for the lakes too. So just kind of a different way to tie a fly that's pretty darn balanced and good pattern to have in your box no matter how you fish.
So does anybody have any questions? Don't see anything in the chat. You can unmute yourself.
What size was that tied on, Jeff?
That was on a 10.
For a river, that's what you'd use?
Yeah, 10 or 12, yeah.
Thanks.
Of course, you carry all these materials in your shop.
We carry most of those materials in the shop. I gotta say, I don't know that we have McFly foam right now, but I'll get it. Yeah.
A little PR advertisement here.
Yeah, yeah.
It's where I learned a lot of my own stuff, and there's a
Jeff,
lot of material.
John Smith back on the Beetle, when you change colors, are you just changing the carapace colors and still going?
No, I usually try to keep the tone of the whole fly the same. So,
Okay.
So if you, if you're doing a brown one, I would get some brown, yarn to match that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Answering the question, 2 extra long jig hook there, Ron, size 10, 2 extra long, perfect. Yeah. Doug, you are learning a lot. Way to go, buddy.
Thanks.
You're like the best learner I know, buddy.
I have a lot to learn.
You know, got a lot to
Jeff?
teach too. Yep.
Hi, Jeff. This is Stevie. I really enjoy your fishing reports that you send out and the emails.
Thanks.
And sometimes the highlights are your rants. So do you have any rants you've saved up that you can share with us tonight?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. No, not really. It takes a while for me to get worked up on a certain subject. So, you know, I've been living the easy life here lately, staying away from boat ramps and most people here for a while. So I'm pretty easy going right now. I suppose pretty soon I'm going to go Christmas shopping. So I'll probably be, probably be pissed off at some point here real soon, but
Yeah, right.
no rants, but thanks. That's funny to say that, Stevie. I think, I really do enjoy the writing the fishing reports, and I recognize the power that some of the things that I say have on people. Some, think, Jesus, that guy must be a total asshole, and other people are like, wow, that really resonates with me. I also hate music on the lakes, or I hate when people are holding up an entire boat ramp for 20 minutes when they could have been doing all that stuff back in the parking lot. Those are the sort of things that get me worked up, and that I'll write about and stuff. And as kind of, if you read my fishing reports and you saw some of the ones last fall and then this fall about boat ramps being closed and bathrooms and stuff being, shut down early at Paulina Lake and at East Lake and things like that. Those sort of things. It's about everything in my life is about customer service. I really try very hard in my business and as a guide and stuff to provide good service. And so when I see like the Forest Service, having, a dock out 3 weeks before the fishing season is over and bathrooms locked up 6 weeks before the fishing season is over, that's not good service. And I'm gonna do everything I can to build a team, an army of people that are gonna, think like me, that maybe are also going to take the time to write to the Forest Service or call the Forest Service and say, hey, this isn't right. And you know what? It's grassroots at its most basic level, but we are making a difference. I had an amazing conversation with somebody connected to the Forest Service today that says we're making a difference and we may see some big changes for the near future. Whether that happens next year, I don't know, but it's moving the needle. And it's funny that fishing report that I love to write so much, fires a lot of you guys up too, and really helps move the needle. So it's not just, it's not just me, it's everybody that reads it and gets fired up and decides to say something.
Well, thank you. And I'm not going to brand you with this title, but I'm a bit of a curmudgeon, and I just want you to know that you're among friends when you have to let off a little steam on that. So
Exactly.
Just go for it.
Yeah, exactly. I was recently described by one of my employees as a lovable prick. I liked it.
Is that correct?
Jeff, have you heard anything out of State Marine Board or anything about extending the ramps over at East Lake with gravel?
No, not yet, but that's one of the things about this conversation that I know I will be having with Kevin. Trying to remember Kevin's last name. He's the district ranger at the Bend office.
Okay.
And so ramps and bathrooms and parking lots and keeping facilities open through the end of the fishing season are top of mind for him and for me.
Well,
So is your fly shop in Sun River then?
My shop is in Sisters.
Oh, is it in Sisters?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think I've been in there before.
Well, if you haven't, make sure to come by.
You gotta come by.
I will.
Yeah.
I'm gonna end the recording right now so we can continue talking, and thank you, Jeff. This was really good. So y'all come back next Thursday and join us for Streamers with Sarah Jo.